As well as its great tradition in Gaelic football, Kerry is renowned for its poets, songwriters and the Fleadh Cheoil style of music, polkas and slides. Tá mid ag díriú ar dús ar an amhránaíocht i gcíoirí thuaidh, agus leanimid a raig an son ag éisteacht le amhránaíocht Christy Cronin agus Jimmy O'Brien ó Tradiisiún Fleadh Cheoil. Tá ard bheasa gomsa ar an amhránaíocht tradiisiúnta, mar bhí an tálamsa an amhránaíocht a Aulam agus a Herbert mé hain agus mé ag fás aníos i Gcorca Gaoine. To begin our journey, we meet Owen McMahon, as he recalls the ballads of his late father and brother, Brian and Gary McMahon, where writing, singing and playing in an All-Ireland football final were all part of the family history.
Since before I was born, and that goes back over 70 years now, my father had an interest in ballads, and I suppose it arose out of his interest in culture, our own culture, and in storytelling, because for my father everything was a story and a story was everything, and that applied to ballads. And he was collecting ballads in the 30s and in the 40s, and then in the late 40s he began to present a programme on Radio Éireann, as it was at the time, called the Ballad Makers Saturday Night. Now this was in the format of an old Shanachie man sitting by the fire, and he telling the story of the song and then the singer singing the song. And such noted singers who took part in that programme were Martin Dempsey, Sean O'Shea and Joe Lynch. And from that my father began to preach the gospel of the ballad, and I'll put it that way to you, because for that programme he gathered material and he brought in from America a wire recorder. Now it was a precursor to the tape recorder, but it was a devil of a thing because it was steel wire and it would snap. And he went around the country and he went to local places and he began to record stories. In one edition of Tror, he recounts going out to Fitzmaurice's in Bale bar, and there one night the owner of the pub said his daughter would come out and sing a song, and she came out and she sang The Cliffs of Dooneen, and that was the first time he ever heard that, The Cliffs of Dooneen, long before it ever became popular. Such other songs that he collected were The Shores of America and The Sandhills of Kilmore, which had made a comeback recently. And all those he had put into an unofficial songbook himself, and that consisted of songs that he collected, songs out of other songs book that he thought were noteworthy, or ballads that he wrote himself. And therein writing ballads became an occupation for him, and he took great delight in it up to the day he died.
My heart tonight is lonely for my sire land, though many miles of ocean lie between. My heart tonight is home again in Ireland, with many a smiling Buchel and Colleen. Ah, would that in that green isle o'er the billows 1 hour of youth this roving lad could steal. I'd stand again entranced beside the willows, along thy banks my silver river feel.
And I was raised in song and stories, and in our house you had ballad sheets, you had the coloured ballad sheets which my father put his ballads down on and were printed by the local printer Bob Cuthbertson. Now Bob was a Scottish Presbyterian and he hated waste, so any bit of paper that was going to waste he would get my father to sit down in the printer shop and he'd say, write an old ballad for that, and that's what came out of it. You had ballads called The Valley of Knockanoor, and he had other ones. He wrote many ballads. He wrote him about bagling, he wrote him about famous hurlers, he wrote him about the fountain at Ballygalow. He wrote many ballads, some of which have been lost and we don't even have them ourselves. But I got a deep appreciation from him for ballads. And then I suppose in our family there were 5 sons. he passed on one gift to each of us. And I suppose he passed on to Gary the gift of ballad writing and ballad singing. And I then worked with Gary for 37 years, so I suppose some of it rubbed off on me.
Yes, yes.
And everywhere I went with Gary in our law practice, whether it was to court or whether it was socially at race meetings or playing golf, Gary was always singing songs in the car or composing new songs, and he'd always say to me, listen to this one that I made up. But the one that he was most proud of, Gary, and he said to me, and I'll never forget it, was, this is the song that they'll be singing when I'm dead. And that was The Land of the Gale.
Now it's 50 long years since I left it, a young fella still in my teens. Did I ever return? Now you ask me. I go back every night in my dreams. Yes, the call of my homeland's all powerful, and I'm certain this time I'll not fail. Then I'll hear my own tongue, and again I'll be young, when I'm back in the land of the gale.
Fragrant odours wafting through the house are more than I can bear. My stomach thinks my throat's been cut as I squirm in my chair. When the dinner gong is sounded and the savages are let loose, then there's a stampede to the dining room for John Boucher has his goose. Now there's starters and there's finishers, smoked salmon and strong wine, all kinds of food with port salut and applesauce so fine. Upon my word, as I ate this bud, I thought I'd blow a fuse. As the gravy trickled down my chin, John Boucher has his goose. They say good manners are all gone in this new century, yet in our midst there still exists fine hospitality. So raise your glass, each lad and lass, I'll not take any excuse. Here's the toast to those we love the most, and John Boucher has his goose.
And I'm just there, you're talking about your memories of Gary as the singer, songwriter, and then of course he was a wonderful sports person as well. And do you think that these two personas crossed over?
Well, of course they did, because he was gregarious and he was always happy in the company of people, and he loved to entertain, and even going to matches on the train he would always sing. And even when he was a supporter in later years, he used to love to get the train from Limerick to Dublin, and he'd sing songs on the train to entertain people. But it had to rub off. But he later years he took to ballad writing very, very much so, and he spent a lot of time in the Gaeltacht, Comhaltas Units, and he wrote some lovely songs about Tig Eileen, about My Home in Gortadu, and other such songs which he was immensely proud of. And when you hear a song of your fathers or your brothers sung in a company, it gives you a sense of pride, and delighted that the ballad tradition was saved by them, because it wasn't popular to collect ballads in the 40s or 50s. And remember that the Clancy's didn't come on the scene until the early 60s. But my father thought that they were essential to our culture. Indeed, I remember reading a book by Joseph O'Connor, Star of the Sea, in which he describes the ballad singer Mulidi going from parish to parish or from county to county singing the ballad. And he described him as the first history maker, or the first teller of history. In other words, he was relating songs of local events, and he was telling them in another part of the country.
Since I was young, I was always competing in the Fleadh Cheoil and Comhaltas competitions and Comhaltas events, and I really enjoyed them. I liked the crack and the spree of Bhíodh Buintlo, agus hahan sé go múrlam a bheith ag cur aithne daoine agsúil agus daoine de friúil ag gach aon bliain. And really these new friendships, they're friendships for life, so they're always going to be there. And I love the music and the singing, and because when you just want to escape from the life from what's happening all around you. You can just sit down and play a tune, or you can sing a song, and it's kind of an escape route for me to get into my own mind and enjoy life a bit more.
Mother lived in the side of the bog, in the neatest old cabin that one ever had, with the shaft of the calf of the bolt in the door, and how she got in there sure nobody knows. But a tarum the dum dum. I said I stepped off with the lines of the song that we got from my grandmother.
Lovely.
And she said she was telling the truth, and I was born first in the house she was born in, as well in the side of the barn. So it went down great.
Now, unfortunately, my father said he collected an awful lot of ballads, but he was convinced that at least 3 or 4 more of every ballad was lost. And a peculiar thing he would always say about ballads, and Gary would always say the same, if you take the example of The Vales of New Doreen, Gary would say the title to that song is wrong. It's The Vales of You Doreen. And the reason for that was that there was no recordings of these earlier songs, and it was the oral tradition. They were sung at the fireside, they were sung at gatherings, and a person who sang that song was very jealous and guarded that song. It was part of his own property, so much so that he almost became once convinced that he wrote it himself. Yes. And then the person who wanted to learn it had to listen to it, and he couldn't jot it down in the company of someone else, as they do now when they say don't record this song at competitions. But he brought the version of the song, and then of course the words changed as different versions were handed down, and that's how you got variations in songs. But it's fascinating, and I am delighted that I have taken an interest in it late in life.
Oh, dreams the song with joy will come, and comes to grief no more. As it came to me, my country, that's dear old Erin shore. I dreamt I was upon a hill beside a lonely vale, and 'twas there I spied a comely maid, and her name was Granawale. She did unveil a lovely harp, by her side she let it fall. She played those tunes, King Brian Boru, Gary on and the Terrace Hall. God Save Ireland was the next, and the martyrs who died in jail. But you need not fret, we'll get home and yet, says poor old Granawale. In O'Connell's time, in 29, there was no better men. It is in O'Connell's time, in 49, we'd gone back to it was a very old song, but we you need fret, we'll get home, we'll right to the run away, you know. I think that's a lovely piece. She did unveil a lovely harp by her side, she let it fall. But I think my grandmother, the poor woman, that she was the noted singer altogether, that said that every night at the stage, an hour a night in the house, you know, when she'd be invited, she wouldn't have time to take off her shawl when she'd have her singing. And it seems that she had umpteen songs.
Lovely.
You know, and that what they'd call the national songs to. The national song like would be, you know, maybe someone that was executed, or, you know, said like hit for ambush or something like this now. Well, it should be before that, but she had one great song, farewell to the cot in the mountain, the cradle first will be to sleep. Tears fell from nature's own fountain, as we sailed o'er the water so deep. We are going to a land where there's plenty, a land that is free across the foam. And each night as I lay on my pillow, I'll dream of an Irishman's home. That was one of her songs.
My first singing teacher I had was Mairead Kern, and then when I got a bit older I went to Joe Creedon, and I learned loads from both of them. So they were two big influences in my singing career. And also is brallam a bheith éisteacht le amhránathe difriúla ar nós mar ní chéileathar agus daoine difriúla mar sin, agus is brallam a bheith éisteacht leis na hamhrán ag fabhla mutha. And I suppose from all that I kind of developed my own style of singing, and that's how I sing nowadays. It's kind of a mix of everything. Well, music, song and dance was always a big part of my life since I was young, because my family, my siblings and everything were always singing and dancing and playing music, and I always wanted to get in on that action, and so I started singing and dancing and playing music. And really an seanos, an áráníocht an seanos is tá grágam don Gaeilin an chuid, agus heasta gom áránachana as Gaeilin tuiscin grá sin a bhíagam. Agus tánín na árán an seanoslam tuiscimíon scéala insint, agus is beallam sa bheith insint scéalta, agus fid le scéala insint tríd árán, agus tá sé just das é dhéanamh. So that's why I like the seanos singing, and that's how I became to start singing.
Oh, some things you few folk that we all of us know have a habit of being out too soon for the 2 o'clock dinner or 4 o'clock tea, should they always turn up about noon. Such a whimsical fancy I ne'er call my own, although the reverse is my fate, for it always occurs that wherever I go I am exactly 10 minutes too late. Punctuality is all very proper, I know, but all hurry and worry I hate, for it always occurs that wherever I go I am exactly 10 minutes too late. I was once in my life very deeply in love, and I quoted in verse and in prose. I obtained a big lock of her hair and a glove, and I made up my mind to propose. The cab drove away as I got to her door. The answer decided my fate, for my rival was there just 10 minutes before, so that I was 10 minutes too late. Punctuality's all very proper, I know, but all hurry and worry I hate, for it always occurs that wherever I go I'm exactly 10 minutes too late. When I jump on a bike or a car or a tram to be nicely in time for a train, I'm quite in a fever and all in a fuss when I find all my efforts in vain. When I find myself safe in the station at last, and believe it 5 minutes to 8, I observe by the clock that it's 5 minutes past, so that I am 10 minutes too late. Punctuality is all very proper, I know, but all hurry and worry I hate, for it always occurs that wherever I go I'm exactly 10 minutes too late.
Then the Groves of Ciarraí, that was a Killarney song, you know, going along you're starting off with, you went through one pleasant summer's evening, I carelessly did pass down by the groves and pleasant shades of charming mackerels. 'Twas there I spied a Colleen, and to me she began to talk, and as me I'd go with her down by the Lover's Walk, my mind did started wandering, 'twas then I had no time, and for this fair most charming one some reasons I did sign. Her eyes they shone like diamonds grand, she was dressed in a robe of green. I know her equals they are few by the groves of Ciarraí. Oh, 'tis many is a Sunday evening we were dancing at the cross. I know she is the fairest one that ever there did pass. I know she is the fairest one that my eyes yet have seen. Sure my heart will break for her sake by the groves of Florine. Oh, 'twas many is the sun. That's a very, very old song. It was, this girl was working in it seems in Muckla's house, and that's going back a long time. And that she went to 8 Americans. Your man is lamenting after her, like, you know. So it was a true story.
So Owen, now, what does singing mean to you now in your life?
Well, I would describe it as a release valve from my humdrum of my ordinary working life, and it, more than anything else, friendship. And I have met some wonderful people, being a member now of the West Limerick Singing Club based in Abbeyfield with Philip Enright and the others, and our monthly sessions there are something to look forward to. And then of course we have the annual Gary McMahon Singing Weekend held every October in Abbeyfield, and to meet different people, and then to travel around the country, to go to singing clubs in Ennis, Clare, Doonbeg, Knockcrockery, Rosslare, all over the country. They're there, and they are an underground movement and do not underestimate them. But it would be remiss of me now not to remember some of those who were not with us and who were with us this time last year. And in particular I remember two friends of mine. One is the great Nora Butler. There will be no one like Nora Butler. She was wonderful and she was a great help to us. And also we had a man from Morden Abbey who would, every Friday night, the first Friday night of the month, he would always start our singing session, Michael Church, and he'd sing that how they murdered Aidan McAnaspey on his way to the Gaelic grounds. As to Gary and writing songs, one last story, I remember being at a Munster football final in later years. He was well retired at this stage, and sitting down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the open stand, and there was a man, another Kerry man who didn't know who I was, sitting alongside me, and he opened the programme, and there was Gary's ballad, The Kingdom's Green and Gold, I think it was. And when the Kerry man opened it, he said, "There's Gary McMahon again. That fella would write a song about anything," he says. I didn't tell him who I was, so I left him with it. But it's a wonderful tradition, and long may it foster, and long may we encourage people to sing. And it's probably the only thing we did in the family, because none of us could play a musical instrument, so we had to have ourselves heard somewhere.
You say tradition counts for naught when two teams take the field. I fear you are mistaken, lad, and time will make you yield. And when your hair is as grey as mine, and the years have made you old, then you'll invoke the truth I spoke of the kingdom's green and gold. You cannot box or bottle it, or grasp it in your hand, but pride of place and love of race inspire a love of land. Time honoured is our birthright, you will never break the mould, for it's deep within the soul of us who wear the green and gold. Grey lakes and mountains soaring high.
Gary would say that songs are like birds, they're meant to take to the air, and people will put different layers to the songs, and long may it be so.
We savour Kerry victories, we salute the gallant foe, and when we lose there's no excuse, we pick up our bags and go. So raise your glass, each lad and lass, to our warriors brave and bold, who each year aspire to the Sam Maguire in the kingdoms green and gold.
I had some mighty callers in the band. Sean McDonough, Johnny McDonough, the famous Connemara singer, We got to be very, very close friends. And he just send down Cushlan Neil to Siobhan and different songs. And we were myself and Johnny were fierce pals. And we'd meet at Milltown Malway. I used to always sing at Milltown Malway. We used to sing in the concert there in the evening. Ciarraí was a very, 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 very good friend of mine out here. And I remember one time we were outside Guinea and he had a tape recorder. I'd be no good now when I'd be like a Ciarraí, they'd be there to sing. I wouldn't want to sing it. But actually had the little button in the black part of his coat here. And he recorded me. He said, when it was all over, I got you now. He said. But he had called me always, he'd be going back to Dingle. And he'd be going back to, there was a man back there named Sean DeHora. Johnny DeHora, very good, one of the real old traditional singers. Great, great singer.
I'm an old man now, my head is grey, my bones are brittle too. Come sit yourself beside me now, and a tale I'll tell to you of the fine young man that once I was, in those days of long ago, when I picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel. Oh, I was live and hardy then, with hair as black as sloe. We wore no shoes in summertime, and laughed in winter snow. I stood tall and straight as I now relate, but those years they have taken their toll since I picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel. In the sports field we kicked football as the goal post I did guard. I played handball in the alley and went home by Girthenard. In the parson's wood I oft times stood, where my first kiss I stole, as we picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel. I fished for sea trout in my lovely Silver River field, and from Foley's orchard I confess sweet apples I did steal. I felt pinch of thorn on an autumn morn, from the Smerla to Mount Cole, as I picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel. Oh, there you have it, that's my tale, from Australia's sunny clime. At the fire of memory I'll warm my hands, if God gives me the time, across whirling tide and ocean. We hope that you have all enjoyed listening to some of the many ballads and balladees of Kerry, as well as hearing about some of the famed ballad makers. Táimid anbhródúil as tradiisiún na háránníochta i Ciarraí, agus tá an tálinne go bhfuil sé beo agus láidir in our measc. Go dtíon chéad ó eile, fág míad slán libh.